I'm going to use one of these, a Scuba dry box, as well as one of these, the beautiful ESP12E Arduino chip. I am going to build a waterproof and wirelessly controlled electronics enclosure, and I hope I'll be able to control it using one of my ROV kits. If this works, it means that I'll be able to control basically any small Arduino project from my submarines wirelessly. But first, I'm going to try an experiment that is relatively simple to test out this idea. So for my very first dry box project, I'm going to be running these two sensors. This is an analog pressure sensor. This should collect data up to 300 feet. And I'm also using this waterproof thermometer. To get the dry box ready, I first Dremel out a small hole in the side. It's just big enough to fit the wires from the temperature probe and from the pressure sensor. To seal the hole, I mixed some 5-minute JB Weld epoxy. I felt ready to put my water seal to the test on a calm afternoon in late October. That is until my ROV's Ethernet jack slipped away beneath a rather sinister looking rock.
Hey, could you give that back, please?
Apparently, a local octopus was looking for a way to connect to the internet.
Could I have that back, please? It's not really for you. Hi. Nope, don't pull it more. Well, no, you stay.
This octopus really wanted to watch Netflix.
Nope. Oh my god. There, thank you.
Oh, I finally got it back. But by the time I did, the sun had gone down. Okay, the octopus foiled me this time, but I still had plenty to do. The two biggest challenges for this project are leaking and signal strength. Now, the leaking I'm not too concerned about. Epoxy usually does the job pretty well. But the signal strength, I have no idea what's going to happen. I'm a bit concerned that the salt water is going to absorb all of the radio waves that are coming out of the ESP's Wi-Fi chip. So, when I test this in the ocean for real, I'll place the dry box as close as possible to the ROV's electronic sphere. I hope that means there won't be too much salt water in the way to absorb the signal. But I'll have to build this thing to find out. I wanted to design a cradle to hold all of the electronics going into the enclosure. So the first step was to take a bunch of measurements of all the hardware. Once I had that, it was time to CAD everything up in Fusion 360. This design was mostly about finding the balance between mounting the boards, the battery, and leaving enough room for wires. At last, I fired up my Ender 3 and got printing. My cradle fit the board so well that the machine screws were kind of just left as a formality. Next, I used zip ties to fasten the battery into place. This is a 1 amp hour, 3.7 volt battery. The ESP board draws so little current that I've actually never run out of power on this battery. Next, I soldered the battery directly to its micro USB powered charging circuit. You can get these little boards on Amazon for about $1 each. Once the battery is full, the charging circuit's LED switches from red to green. Now in the finished product.
Pressure and temperature data are collected by the ESP12E board. Safe inside the dry box, it gets processed and sent to my ROV's onboard Raspberry Pi. Finally, the data gets delivered to my tablet running the Blue Dot ROV app.
If I want this to work, I have to write a piece of software called a socket that runs on each of my 3 devices.
First, I wrote the socket that runs on my ESP12E. I used the Arduino IDE. Then, I wrote up a socket that runs on the Raspberry Pi, as well as a modification to the telemetry socket that's running on the Blue Dot ROV app. Before trying this new software on a real ROV, I made sure to test it on a backup Raspberry Pi disk image. And hey, it looks like it works.
The next step is to take the new modified disk image and plug it into a real ROV.
Once it's in the water, buoyant force should push the dry box up towards the ROV's sphere. With the ROV sphere touching the Wi-Fi box, I was pretty sure that the signal would be able to make it to the Raspberry Pi, but there was only one way to find out.
My ROV is finally ready to dive with its onboard Wi-Fi controlled instrument cluster.
As soon as the ROV hit the water, I could tell that I was still getting depth and temperature readings. Success. Now it was time to take the ROV for a dive. I flew straight out over a surprisingly healthy kelp forest to the deep end of the channel. I turned to face a frond of giant kelp and dove straight down. Now there was a bit of an offset on the depth reading, but as I descended, the depth did increase. Now I could finally see how this Wi-Fi payload would perform under pressure. When I got to the bottom of the channel, I noticed that the depth was reading out around 7 to 11 meters. That seemed a little deep, so I began to suspect that I may have made a classic American mistake.
I think the depth is reading out as feet, and the entire time I was setting up today, I thought it was going to be giving us meters. The temperature, though, is working perfectly. It's reading out a brisk 63.5 Fahrenheit, and that agrees with the Surfline report for today.
And this was all getting sent to my submarine's computer with a Wi-Fi signal. After spending a bit more time down there harassing California's state fish, it was time to return to the surface.
I think this project was a huge success. The idea of a Arduino payload that you can control or pull data from using Wi-Fi worked perfectly. In fact, it worked so well that I was able to notice unrelated problems with converting pressure to depth measurements. So I think this went really well. We can look forward to some more videos on different payloads. If you like this video, please subscribe. If you didn't like it, you should subscribe anyway. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you